Amir Ibn Khalifah Abdul Wali here this afternoon. He's giving the khutbah for us this afternoon. And while he's here, he's traveling back to Egypt, where he's living now. But while he's here, we thought we would have an opportunity for him to give us a few words about knowledge and education. Just briefly, Amir Abdul Wali is from the area. His father, Khalifah Abdul Wali, was the Imam here with the Habul Yameen for a short period of time. He was an educator here in our community at the Islamic School in New Jersey, in Newark, and his passion was Arabic, and he was such a good teacher, instructor, taught my children, other children, and obviously he imbued that love of Arabic and learning with his son Amir. Amir has traveled on to Egypt, studied over there. Alhamdulillah, was able to obtain a degree in Sharia, and he's also Hafiz Quran, and he's teaching now. He has educational classes that he's teaching now. We're encouraging everybody to benefit from them. He'll be talking about that, but this is a resource from our own community, an indication of what we all can do and achieve if we put our hard work to it by the permission of Allah and the grace of Allah. We can learn wherever we are, all over the planet. So we was trying to wait for a few more people to come, but we're going to start. And alhamdulillah, this lecture is being broadcast. So those who are not here physically will be able to, at some point, retrieve it. So without further ado, we're going to give it to our brother Amir Abdul Wali.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi wa kafa wa salatan wa salaman ala ibadihi alladhina istafa la siyama Abdul Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man ihtada. Thumma amma ba'd. So today, inshallah, I wanted to take a couple of moments before I return back to Egypt to just share a few memories with this community because it's a very precious and dear community to me. I recall being a young boy running around the masjid, and I guess to start and say that I'm no one special. I'm nothing that can't be duplicated over and over and over again within our community. So alhamdulillah, I want to be able to, share some of these backgrounds. So, a lot of times we feel that we can't relate, and we feel that certain people or figures are out of our league and out of reach, and that's not the case. Alhamdulillah, growing up here in the areas between Newark and East Orange and Elizabeth, alhamdulillah, just like any other child, went to Islamic school in Newark on Branford Place, and everything was the same. If there was any difference that may have given an advantage, is that there was a desire to learn, and that desire was fed. That is the only difference. A lot of times, we may see that ourselves or our children, they want to learn, they want to increase, but sometimes we hold them back. And we prevent them from attaining their true potential. For whatever reason it is that we decide to hold them back, whether it be fear or it be other circumstances that would prevent us from letting them go or bringing someone to give them their fill for the desire that they have. So what I want to talk about today is kind of completing what we spoke about in the khutbah. In the khutbah, we established that seeking knowledge it's mandatory. It is something that we are all going to be questioned for, to the point where some standards that we may live by are actually misconstrued. A lot of times, sisters would think that they need their husband's approval to seek knowledge. No. She is ordered, commanded by Allah before she got married to seek knowledge. That command never went anywhere. And a husband does not supersede that. A husband cannot prevent her from seeking knowledge, especially when it relates to her religion. Because on the day of judgment, she will stand and she'll be questioned alone for what she did or did not do. And the husband cannot stand in front of her and say, well, ya Allah, I told her no. And even if one will say, could we dare stand in front of her and say, ya Allah, you commanded her to seek knowledge, but I told her no. I don't want to be in that position. I don't know anybody else. So seeking knowledge, nothing supersedes that, as long as it is in the realm of what is a dire necessity for every Muslim to know. Okay? When I began my journey of traveling and seeking knowledge, I was only 10 years old. And I had no clue what I was really doing or getting myself into. My father had came home from work one day and he called me to the living room and he asked if I wanted to go to Egypt and study. And I had been to Egypt, a few years prior, so I had an expectation of what it was like. And in that time when I went the very first time, I was only 7 years old, and I stayed there for 3 months. During those 3 months, I had so much fun playing soccer with the Imam's son. Somehow, he spoke no English, I spoke no Arabic. We managed to communicate somehow. But by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I found that I memorized all of Juz Amma while playing the majority of the time. And I sat back and I thought and I said, well, at IS&J, students graduate from the 8th grade, then they go to Ahl Sunnah to attend high school, and if they're lucky, they memorize Juz Amma by then. If I did this while playing, I could only imagine what I could do if I took it serious. This was how I felt as a 7-year-old. And I just said, I think I could do this, inshallah. If Allah gives me the chance, and I began to make dua that if Allah would give me the chance to return, I would show Allah that I can do it, and I would. And once I returned back to the States, it seemed almost impossible that I was going to have a chance to go back again and study. But when my father came home that night, and he said, go to Egypt and go to school there. And I remembered the promise that I made to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so I said, yeah, I want to go, yes. And then my father, being, those of you who know Brother Khalifah, it always comes with a hook or a catch. And he said, but I'm not going with you. And without thinking, I said, okay. Your mother's not coming with you. I had to think for a second. Okay. Your brothers and sisters are staying. You're going by yourself. And I said, okay. He said, do you understand what I'm saying? He said, something can happen to you while you're there, and we won't be able to come and get you. Something can happen to one of us here, and you won't be able to come and see us. And I said, I understand, but this is what I have to do. And then he reminded me of a hadith where Abu Hurairah says, the Prophet ﷺ says, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu hatta al-namlatu fi juhriha wal hutu fil bahri la yusalluna ala muallim an-nas al-khayr. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his angels, even the ant in its home or in its hole, and even the fish in the sea, they pray for the person who teaches people good knowledge, beneficial knowledge. And that the angels, they make dua for the person seeking knowledge, as long as they're seeking knowledge. And that was, the talk we had. Now, I still wasn't fully prepared for what was to come. The journey was nowhere near as simple as things are today. I feel like I went back in time. I left the city of Newark in the year of 2000, and I went to a village in Alexandria. The village, there were no telephones there. We didn't have internet yet. There was no pavements. My neighbors kept cows in their houses. Some had rabbits and goats in their homes. Everyone kept chickens and roosters on their roofs. And it was like the Twilight Zone for me, because it was just a completely new and different world. During that process, in the very beginning, it's always the most difficult in the beginning. Why? Because Allah is trying to test you. Allah wants to make sure, do you really want this? How bad do you really want it? And I wanted it so bad that I had to put up with a whole lot of nonsense. So number one, my guardian, a beloved brother from the community who lives over there in Egypt till today, he enrolled me in a preschool. He enrolled me in a school where my classmates were 3 years old and I was 10. Just think about that for a second. Very embarrassing. So not only do I not speak Arabic, I'm a giant in the classroom, and of course, being African American, I stood out very well. After preschool, I would go home, and we had to one of our neighbors, and may Allah preserve him. He was my first Quran teacher. May Allah bless him and his family with the best in this life and the next, because he just had so much knowledge. He wasn't just a Quran teacher. He taught us Quran, Arabic, math, science, history, for all grades for grade school. So from first grade through sixth grade. And each class was an hour. And I had to attend for the next 5 hours classes with him. So I had to attend first, then second, then third, then fourth. Then I would go home and eat some lunch and dinner by then. And then go back to attend sixth grade and then have Quran class. This was my schedule every single day. So when you're in that beginner's phase, you need to amplify what you're doing in order to overcome the hardship. Because it's tough in the beginning. And the only way to get over it is to do it more. So I'm sure that most of you here drive, but if you could think back to when you just learned how to drive, you just got your permit, and how scary it was to get on the highway, or how scary it was to parallel park. How do you get better at doing it? By doing it some more, right? It's the only way. You got to keep on doing it until it becomes natural. And when it comes to learning, whether it's reading the Arabic language, learning Quran, the only way to get over that hump is to do it more and more and more and more. You have to surround yourself with the knowledge at all given times. Once you come out of that phase, what happens is that you will find that it becomes easier from there on out. So if I learned my first juz in 3 months, I managed to finish the entire Quran, for example, within about 4 years and a half, 5 years. And that's just from the sheer repetition. Most of my classmates who were Arab did not finish in that time. They finished when I started memorizing. My classmates already knew about 18 juz of Quran. So they're almost done, more than halfway through. And I was just starting out. I had about 3 juz when I started competing in my head with them. And what I would do was very simple. I took no breaks. There were no days off. When it came to Allah's book, because my goal was to finish. So my friends like, hey, you want to go play some soccer? I'm okay. And I would sit down, open my mushaf, and memorize. And I would go to my teacher, and he would correct me and give me some more. To the point where I began going to my teacher twice a day. And my teacher was like, okay, your memorizing is way too fast. He began to give me more pages. So around the time I was memorizing about maybe 3 pages a day. What's known as an eighth of a juz. By the time I got to Surah Al-Baqarah, which is 2 juz and a half, I finished Al-Baqarah within less than a week. And I was just so excited to finally finish the journey I started. So as you gain that momentum, you also have to increase. Our life is going to be surrounded by knowledge. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't have a life any longer. It doesn't mean you don't have a social life. I had friends, I had fun. But I made sure that I prioritized my Islamic knowledge, because that was my salvation. I knew that I had left home, a mother, a father, siblings, communities that were relying on me to attain and acquire the knowledge. Brothers and sisters, you never know who's going to rely on you to acquire some knowledge. You could be on a bus or a train or a plane and have a small conversation with the person next to you, and it could change their lives forever. You never know. We never know who will strive to get up to pray some tahajjud because they say, you know what? I know so-and-so is probably praying right now. They're not going to beat me to Jannah. This is what Allah says in the Quran, وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. And within that, they should compete, those who compete. Meaning in aiming to get towards Jannah. Umar ibn Khattab, whenever he saw Abu Bakr doing something, he would try and compete with him. He would try to see if he could outdo him. He would try to outgive him in charity, outpray him. But Abu Bakr was someone special, the first to believe. And Abu Bakr set a high standard for those who wish to compete with him. And so one day the Prophet ﷺ was gathering money for to prepare an army. And he commanded the Sahaba to give what they could. And Umar ibn Khattab, he said, you know what? Today is the day. I just got some money. Alhamdulillah, things are doing well. I'm going to take my money, and I'm going to split it in half. So imagine if Allah blessed you with some inheritance, a house that came out of nowhere, a lot of wealth, and you just say, okay, you know what? I'm going to take this, I'm going to split it in half. And he came with half of his wealth. And he gave it to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ looked at the amount of money and said, Ya Umar, what have you left for your family? And Umar said, Ya Rasulullah, I've left for them the exact same. And then Umar went and sat down, more than likely in his head, saying, yeah, talk that. And he waits for Abu Bakr to come. Moments that Abu Bakr comes with an enormous amount of wealth. And he comes and places it in front of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet sees the amount of money and says, Ya Abu Bakr, what have you left for your family? And Abu Bakr being Abu Bakr, who had the highest amount of faith amongst all Muslims, he responds and says, I've left Allah and His Messenger for them. Meaning, I gave you everything I have, and I know for certain Allah will take care of my family. The belief he had could not be matched. And Umar then, he realized that he was competing with the wrong person, using a match he could not win. And even after Prophet ﷺ died, he tried. But he quickly realized that Abu Bakr was always 10 steps ahead. And you should be that for your brothers and sisters, because you never know. Someone, somewhere who knows you, knows of you, will say, brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so used to always do this. Let me make sure I do this. I remember as a child, we had certain sisters who would always have a dua for something. They would always think like, oh, say this, say this. They had all the, the book, the fortunes of the Muslim, they had it memorized by heart. And it's like, oh man, mashallah. I, as a child, used to call it, that's just a fortress. Meaning because she knew all the du'as. And it's an inspiration for someone. So all of this is to give a little bit of background that I'm no different from anyone in here. I look at the faces here and I remember many of you as a child, holding your hand, crossing the street, or going skating, or going to Six Flags. Mashallah, I have a lot of uncles and aunties here, a lot of brothers and sisters, a lot of friends that I grew up with. So I'm no one special. When I compare myself to my classmates, I'm no one compared to them. They're way better than me. They know so much more. They're more diligent, more disciplined. And so there's always going to be levels to knowledge. And that is the very first thing I want to talk about today, is that we have to learn in levels. Just because we learned something doesn't mean we're done with it. There's always going to be a level deeper. You learn to read and recognize the Arabic letters. Okay, that's great. How long does it take you to read a page of the Quran? If it takes you more than 3 to 5 minutes, you need a coach. You need someone to help you read better, read more efficiently. Are you pronouncing the Quran the proper way? Something that no one ever taught us or told us is that when we recite the Quran, it should not matter whether you're from America, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, Pakistan, Timbuktu, Palestine, South Africa. We should all sound the same. There are no dialects or accents when it comes to reciting the Quran. Why? Because there's a science to how each and every single letter is to be pronounced. Therefore, one should not be able to detect whether you're an Arab or a non-Arab by how you read and recite the Quran. There is one of the most famous teachers of Tajweed. He made one of the first poems ever written. Sheikh al-Jazari. He says, "Man lam yujawwid al-Qur'ana athimu." Whoever does not apply Tajweed to the Quran, they're in a state of sin. So every time we recite and we're not giving every single letter its full right, we're committing a sin. We have to learn how to pronounce Allah's book the proper way. And there is no excuse for a non-Arab or over an Arab. So yes, you get the reward of the struggle, because it may not be that easy. You get the reward of the struggle. However, it does not exempt you from trying and applying yourself. Is everybody with me? So I want to just go down a list of sciences that every Muslim should know. Every Muslim needs to be aware of, because they govern our everyday lives. And I'm going to go in levels again, because not everyone is at the same level. And we all start at different places. But the very first of those levels is learning to read the Arabic language comfortably. Getting to where you no longer have to struggle. You no longer have to think about how to read. Whenever I have my students and I teach them, I say, there are 3 steps to learning anything in life. Whether it's Arabic, Quran, driving, no matter what it is. There are 3 steps to learning anything. Step number 1, learn the rules. You have to know what you can, what you cannot do. You have to know all of the ins and outs of the rules of that subject. So if you want to drive a car, you have to know you must stop at a stoplight. You must stop at a stop sign. You must yield for this. These are all intricate rules. Now that you know them, step number 1. Step number 2 is you must apply those rules. You must do it and do it and do it until it becomes second nature to you. So that's the practice aspect of acquiring knowledge. And then step number 3, and everyone gets caught off guard with this one. You must forget the rules. Meaning, you must be able to do them subconsciously. without applying any thought to it whatsoever. That is when you know that. Those of you who drive today, do you have to think any longer where the clutch is or how to turn your car on? No, you could wake up, you could be halfway asleep and still get from your home to your job if you're still driving to your job while you're still asleep. You could go from one city to the next and not even realize you drove that distance. You zone out in your head thinking about something. Next thing you know, you're putting up in a driveway. Like, when did I get here? And you don't even recognize or realize. Why? Because you were on autopilot. And you want to get to being on autopilot when it comes to reading the Arabic language. That's the most important thing. Why? Because that is the only time when you'll finally be able to start applying yourself to think about the meaning at hand. But for the most part, those of us who read while struggling, we're trying to avoid making a mistake on the next fatha, kasra, dhamma. Oh, there's a tanween coming. Oh, there's this rule of tajweed now. Does it sound familiar to everybody? We got to get over that hump to where it's subconscious. And the only way to do that is how? Repetition. You have to have a teacher. Sometimes they, I do it on my own by myself. Can't do that. If a person, those who are into boxing, someone wants to get prepared for a fight, they're very much capable of training themselves. Do they do that? No, it would be suicide. Someone wants to prepare for a triathlon or the Olympics for swimming or something like that. Do they go and do it by themselves? No. They always go and get a coach. They always go and get a teacher. Prophet Muhammad had a teacher. Angel Jibreel would come and revise the Quran with the Prophet every single year. And the year he passed away, he revised the Quran twice. So the Prophet himself had a teacher. What about us? Right? We have to have a teacher. No excuse. And you got to make sure that your teacher is qualified. Because that is the only way they're going to make sure you get pushed and you move forward. They know, and they've been down that road before, so they know what to expect. They know the pitfalls. They know everything that could get you hung up. They know how to motivate you. They know how to tell you when you're being lazy, and how to pat you on the back when you do well. You have to have a teacher. All right. So after learning to read the Arabic language comfortably, number 2 on the list is you have to learn Tajweed. And we've mentioned why. We have to know how to pronounce Allah's words in the proper way. We got to be able to get over not being able to say, we can't say Alhamdulillah. We can't say Alhamdulillah. No, we got to learn how to say Alhamdulillah. Maghdubi. Those tricky letters. There's about 5 or 6 letters in Arabic that we as African Americans struggle with, or as Westerners struggle with. Kha, Sad, Dad, Ain, Ghain, maybe Qaf. The other letters are pretty easy. But those few letters we struggle with a little bit. And so you need someone to help you with that. And a teacher will go through it with you, and they'll make sure you learn how to get it properly. And you want to make sure that whoever you choose as a teacher doesn't give you an easy way out. You want that teacher's going to be tough on you because that means they love you. It means they want you to apply yourself to be the best. Whenever I was looking for a Quran teacher, after memorizing the entire Quran, I had so many mistakes because my initial teacher was not qualified. I still make dua for him because he got me there. But after I got there, I realized that it was almost all wrong. There is nothing like building something to then be told, you got to break it down, do it all over again. As kids, I know I remember, I'm sure about everybody else, but your mom asks you to fold some clothes and you go and you fold them all up and you're all done. You're like, this is wrong. Start all over again. When it comes to the Quran, the worst feeling ever. I think I had memorized about 20 juz of Quran, and I went over to a friend's house, and he had a specialized Quran teacher for his kids, and he told the teacher to test me, and I'm like, okay, I know what I know, and I know what I know, alhamdulillah. And so he said, recite al-Fatiha. I'm like, I know more than that. He said, just recite al-Fatiha for me. So I recited al-Fatiha. And then he said, you have like 7 mistakes in al-Fatiha. And my mouth hit the floor. Huh? What do you mean? I know like 20 juz of Quran. Every teacher has approved it. And he said, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. You need to learn Tajweed. I said, but I took Tajweed. I know Tajweed. So you don't know good enough. Go and learn it again. It was devastating. And so I do my very best with my students to let them know from the very beginning. This is what's expected. That way, you don't go through that. You think you up here, and then someone comes around and is like, no, you're all the way down here. That humbling moment is best to make sure that you know exactly how to pronounce Allah's words. Because Allah's words deserve to be pronounced at their finest every single time. Allah's words, they are majestic and they are beautiful. And they deserve to be shown off every time we recite the Quran. After we learn Tajweed, this is when we get into some of the basics. So we learn the foundations when it comes to Quranic Arabic. There is a huge misunderstanding when it comes to the Arabic language. Why? Because for the most part, those of us who don't know Arabic don't know where to start. We go and we find books that are out there, but they're conversational books. And our goal may or may not be to learn how to speak Arabic. There's a difference between learning to understand Arabic and learning to speak Arabic. What we need is learning how to comprehend Arabic, and specifically the Quran. What we learn in the Arabic books of how to talk, for the most part, no one in the Arab world talks like that today. No one. So it's almost the same as if I went and took the work of Shakespeare and learned to talk like Shakespeare, and I go and talk like him at a supermarket. Like, where does this guy come from? Right? So we have to learn how to, if we're going to talk, that's one thing. But we need to comprehend. And that's a lot easier than learning to talk. So we learn to understand the Quranic Arabic. The vocabulary is already set. And it's easy for us to go through it. It is not difficult or tough. So once we begin to take some of the basics of Quranic Arabic, we learn some basics in grammar, how to identify certain forms. Arabic is a lot of patterns. It's a very easy language once you know the pattern. All right? It's like, okay, I can't really say this here, but think about someone who has a hobby of picking locks. The more locks you pick, the easier it is to pick locks. It's no longer a challenge any longer. Or think of someone who knows how to do the Rubik's Cube. For some people, it's like, it's the hardest thing in the world. It's impossible. And then someone else will take it, blindfolded, sipping on some tea with one hand. There, done, 9 seconds. What's the difference? They learned how to identify the patterns of how to solve a Rubik's Cube. And once you learn the pattern, it is easy. You just gotta learn the pattern. But if you try to hack your way through it on your own, you're going to struggle. So always learn the patterns. So now we read Arabic well, we can recite the Quran well, we have a general understanding of of what's happening. Our next goal, and I'm gonna list our first 9 goals of levels of what we should be learning. So our number 4 is going to be to memorize the last 3 juz of Quran. At this point, you should be A-okay to start memorizing. Your pronunciation should be well enough, and you can now get on that path that's your next milestone. Memorize the last 3 juz. And start from the back. Again, if you have a teacher, they'll tell you, why they say you should start from the back. It's a lot easier to memorize. The verses are short. They're concise, they're very simple. Versus trying to start from Baqarah and work your way down. It'll take you forever to get through Baqarah. But you start with easy surahs, and you're like, oh, I already did 40 surahs already. I only have this much left. So it psychologically makes it a lot easier. And they're easier to read, they're shorter surahs. After we memorize the last 3 juz, here we're at a point where we can begin to do some actual studying now. Now we're ready to start studying. All of that was just a primer. That's just the foundation. And I would recommend something like, let's say, a general book in fiqh. And you take a book in fiqh and you go from cover to cover with a teacher. Personally, I would recommend a comparative book on fiqh for beginners. A book that covers all 4 madhahib, all 4 schools of thought. Why? Because you need to figure out, who are you? Which of those 4 patterns align with your moral compass? We've all had different upbringings. We may have all had different teachers and different things we may feel comfortable with doing or not doing. When it comes to those gray line areas, we address them differently. So when you learn according to the 4 madhahib of fiqh, 1, it teaches you that it's not just one way. There may be other ways to do it. So we're not so quick to fight someone, say you're wrong. No, we learn to be more tolerant, to be more understanding. And when you have a bigger picture of, okay, it can be done like this, or like this. It can't be done like this. almost every single year, we have debates on when does Ramadan start, when is it going to be Eid. So-and-so said they calculated it. So-and-so is going with Saudi Arabia. So-and-so said they couldn't sight the moon. Who's right, who's wrong? Unless we sit down and study, we never know. And a lot of times, if someone is reporting what someone else said, you have no way of verifying that. Well, Sheikh so-and-so said this. How would you know that that's the actual truth? So when it comes to fiqh, you have to know for yourself. Because you will answer to Allah. Personally, fiqh is not a matter of where I would like to just blame it on someone else. Well, so-and-so told me to do this. In some cases, yes, but most cases, I want to know for myself. I want to know for myself because I have to have that yaqeen, that certainty in my heart that what I'm doing is correct. Because if that's not there, I want to change my course. I would hate to wind up in the hellfire over a silly mistake or something that could have simply been avoided. I have brothers say that, oh no, you can eat you can eat the meats that be high as long as we're in America, it's a Christian nation. Are you sure it's a Christian nation? Are you sure they're people of the book? Do you know Tyson, the company? Do you know how they slaughter their animals? I want to know for sure that if I decide to eat a steak or some ground beef or whatever, I know it's lawful. And I don't have to have that doubt in my heart, or they're just, it's not my problem. No, it is. That's our nourishment. It's the most important thing. I always think of the man who's in the desert, who raises his hand, Ya Rab, Ya Rab. His food source is from haram. His drink source is from haram. He's been fed with haram. His clothes is from haram. Who will accept his dua? Something as simple as that, because we nourish ourselves and we don't pay any attention to it. Animals were sacrificed. Their lives were given up so that it could sustain ours. It's a major thing. We gotta be more diligent. So we go through a book of fiqh to understand the aspects of worship and dealings with one another. So that includes things like, worship includes, of course, salah, saum, fasting, zakah, hajj, and a few other things regarding worship, like oaths, swearing and things like that, and slaughtering and things like that. That's worship. Then you have trade or dealings with other people. So you have different types of businesses, renting, buying, marriage, divorce. There is so much to say on marriage and divorce. I would miss my flights. And we all know it. We gotta do better. A lot of times we don't even know what standard to even choose a wife on. The Prophet said, marry the one who has religion. What does that mean? Because she prays 5 times, does that make her religious? The Prophet tells the women to marry the man that you're satisfied with his religion and his character. What does that mean exactly? At what level should one be satisfied? How do you identify character? And how do you identify religiousness? It's a serious question. And many people don't know the answer to it because it's not that easy to answer. We got to have that intellect to know how. So after we choose a book of fiqh and we study, hopefully according to the four madhahib, that's a beginner's book. That doesn't mean you're done with fiqh. You're going to come back afterwards and then choose a madhab, a school of thought, and study according to that school of thought. First as a beginner's book. Then again, if you wish to move further forward. And each time you go deeper and deeper, it's going to give you that much more knowledge. And it's going to give you that certainty to know that what you're doing is correct. So far, is this beneficial to everyone? Want me to keep going? I am married, alhamdulillah. I have a wife and have currently 2 children and a third on the way, inshallah. My wife, she's from Philadelphia. She's also a hafiz of Quran, alhamdulillah. And we all live in Egypt for the time being. And alhamdulillah, she's my best friend. She's my partner in every single aspect. We teach classes together. We prepare things together. Alhamdulillah, we do everything together, mashallah. After we go through a book of fiqh, here now you're at a point where you can begin to dive into some other sciences now. So this is a good time to start going into the grammar of the Arabic language, morphology, and you now can go more in depth. You can begin to identify other and more deeper things that most people would not notice. Most people would miss, they would overlook it. And that's really where you begin to find the miracle of the Quran. Where it's like, wait, why did Allah use this word right here? Why is this here? I was reciting a verse today, this morning, and I was just preparing for my khutbah today. And I came across a verse. And the verse says, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah will elevate those who believe from you and those who were given knowledge in steps or degrees. Now, what made me ponder is, why did Allah use the word minkum, of you? In Arabic, grammatically, we would say that it is za'idah. It's extra, because it's not needed in that sentence. But here's the thing. Would Allah put an extra word that's not in the Quran? Impossible. It's there for a reason. And so I reached out to my Quran buddy, who is my father, and I sent him a message today, and I'm waiting for his response. I said, why do you think Allah put the word minkum in this ayah right here? What I'm thinking is Allah trying to say, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ. Allah will elevate those who believe of you, meaning from the companions, and those who are given knowledge in stages, meaning that those who were given knowledge and the companions who believed are on the same platform. Now, if that's what it means, that's game changing. Do you know why? Because for the most part, most of us have made peace that we can never catch up to the Sahaba, right? They're going to have the best places in Jannah. They're going to have the Beverly Hills and the Cherry Hills. And we're going to be stuck in the suburbs, or whatever's left. But if what this ayah means, then all we got is acquire some knowledge. Okay. I want that Beverly Hills in Jannah, please. So it opens up the opportunity to continue and to further compete to where it's like, oh, well, I ain't never gonna make it to Firdaus because all of us Sahaba, they're all there. Like, I'm probably gonna make it like maybe second or third level in Jannah. Sometimes this is how we think. We self-sabotage ourselves. And wallahi, this ayah is what I thought of today, and I said, you know what? Let me listen to my father and see what he thinks. But if it is what I think it may be, to me that's game changing. And this is what we need to, begin to ponder and think about. Afterwards, we want to make sure now we should be on target to memorizing at least an additional 15 juz of Quran at this point. Memorizing should now be an easy thing where you can you wake up in the morning for Fajr, you take 20, 30 minutes, and you can memorize an entire page. It shouldn't be no problem whatsoever. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. Memorizing the Quran is not hard. It is not difficult. As Muslims, if I was to shake each and every one of you, I am sure we could find at least 7 to 10 albums of music amongst us, if not more. If we want, we can do the same for Quran. We just gotta apply ourselves. There are times where we pick up on a song, we're even trying to listen to it. You're just walking by because a neighbor is blasting it just stuck to your head. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? It happens all the time. So our brains are very much capable of acquiring knowledge on its own. We just gotta set the parameters for it to do the right thing. That's it. It's very simple. Our next step from there is going to be to begin taking Islamic studies. Now, Islamic studies is a variety of subjects. So you have hadith. When I say hadith, I mean 2 subjects in particular. Memorizing the hadith, but also mustalah hadith, meaning the terminologies of hadith. What does it mean? Then you have tafsir, and you have ulum al-tafsir. You have aqidah or tawheed. We have manners and etiquettes. We have, most importantly, seerah, the biography of the Prophet ﷺ, the companions. We have to know who the Prophet was. The only way to know that is for us to study his life thoroughly, to a point where it's in our hearts, it's in our minds. We know, we have to, what would Prophet Muhammad ﷺ do? What would he think of in this situation? We have to study that. We've become too disconnected to where many of us think like, I can't relate to the Prophet ﷺ. He's the Prophet. But Allah gave us the Prophet so we could relate to him. Allah did not send the Prophet as an angel. He was a human being, just like any of us. Yes, he was in the most perfect as a human could get. But that does not mean that we can't achieve that either. The Prophet, he made mistakes. And Allah corrected him. And we have surahs to prove that. Allah taught and disciplined the Prophet. And all it takes from us is to do our very best to imitate that. Now, if we fall short, we fall short. But we did our best. But to not apply ourselves at all, That's not allowed. From there, this is where you be more at an advanced level. And you will begin to acquire knowledge in a lot of different aspects. Okay? But this is just an overall of what to expect. Does it sound tough and difficult? Or does it sound easy? It's pretty straightforward. Both. It's hard. It's more, the hard work is just showing up. Making sure you are there. You make it a priority. A lot of times, what happens is we don't make it a priority. So it comes second. And when it comes second, we put things on the back burner. There's a verse in the Quran that terrifies me whenever I think of it. Allah says, Nasullaha fanasiyahu. They forgotten Allah, and so Allah has forgotten them. We forget to make Allah a priority, and so when it comes to our priorities, we all have something we hope and dream for, something we're asking Allah for constantly. And sometimes we wonder how come it's taking so long. Well, have we made Allah a priority? When we do, Allah says, "Fadhkuruni azkurkum." Remember me, and I'll remember you. Allah says He gives them both in the Quran. They forgot Allah, so Allah forgot them. Remember me, and I'll remember you. And so Allah is letting us know we have to make Him a priority. We make Him a priority, whatever it is that we want, we'll get, inshallah. But if we forget Allah, we put Allah second. Allah's going to put us second. It's only fair. It's only fair. So the hardest part is just making sure that you're dedicated. The same way we can make sure that we block out time to do whatever we like to do in our lives, whether we follow a TV show or we like to go and attend some type of match or whatever we like to do in our leisure time, we know how to fit it in. We know how to make time, make sure we get time for Netflix and chill. We make time to go to the movies, make time to have fun, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. But we just got to make sure that we make sure that a class comes first. Okay, I'm going to start acquiring. I'm going to dedicate 3 or 4 days out the week, an hour or 2 each time to study. I'm going to go find me a teacher, whether it's me or not. I'm going to go find someone I can sit with online, in person. I'm going to learn. In the East Coast, in New Jersey, Essex County, we do not have an excuse to say we did not have a qualified teacher available. When I was a child, I remember Sheikh Khidr, Imam Ismail, Imam Abdul Aziz. We have so many assets within our communities that have been available and are still available. And if you were to reach out and rely on them to utilize them, they could not say no. But we just got to apply ourselves. The reason why we don't have a lot of classes going on is because teachers, they get tired of students putting class second. Oh, I was going to come today, but, I had to take my wife to the market. It's like, well, you knew that this was your class time. Why did you? But this is what happens every single time. Oh, well, this happened. And we let the fear of the dunya scare us away from acquiring our akhirah. If you set Allah first, no matter what, all of your affairs will fall in order. And that's guaranteed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be like Abu Bakr. I left Allah and His Messenger for my family. I know Allah's going to take care of them. It's Allah's promise. Okay? Inshallah, I am looking for a few students for the time being to go through that program that I just mentioned, and to go through it from step 1 all the way down to, I mentioned 9 steps today. And it's not going to be at a fast pace or a slow pace. I go on the pace of my students. Classes would be online about 3 days a week, and each time about maybe 2 to 3 hours maximum. So it's not a whole lot where it's taking up all your day. You would be required to, of course, to have some study time at home outside of that. I am looking for dedicated students, though. I'm not looking for students who are, oh, well, you see, I don't want to have excuses. Because if you were to all know, like, my past week, how it has been going, you would say, how are you still standing right here? I landed Tuesday evening from a plane, off the plane, flying from Egypt to Turkey to the States. Came in New York, came through. Next morning, I had work to do. No time to be jet lagged, no times for breaks. Wednesday and Thursday, I had to take care of my business. And here I am Friday, spending the day with my community. And the moment I finish from here, I'm heading to the airport. So, inshallah, if Allah allows me to live, and you guys don't keep me from going. But we just gotta make that dedication. And if we do, Allah's gonna make a way for you. Okay? Any questions on anything? If those are maybe interested in classes, I will give Brother Dawood some information. If you may just leave your name, phone number, or email, or all three, and we can find a way to get you guys in on the class, inshallah. But outside of that, any questions, whether about me personally? Yes, sir.
I know classes that I took, we always started with the Medina series, and one of the problems I used to have when the brother tested us, know the alphabet and things like that. My problem was with the class, he didn't allow you to speak English. And we had people in the class that spoke a little Arabic. So to me, that was a disadvantage because they can ask a question. I couldn't ask a question. That's just like I try to explain to myself. I went to school for tailoring and design. And if I'm going to teach you how to sew, I got to take everybody in the same level. I can't bring an advanced sewer with somebody who doesn't know how to cut out a piece of fabric. It just don't work. And so that's one of the things I think it discouraged me a lot. We have people set up, always start with the Medina series, and we would just drop off. But you have people who is at different levels.
I understand what you're saying.
My process of learning, because when he said for him, and I was like.
So when I went to Egypt and I got enrolled in school, I did not fully speak Arabic. My classmates, they were all Egyptian. And I know the intimidating feeling that you're mentioning. However, I would encourage you to stick with the process, even if it's difficult, because what's going to happen is you're going to learn at an accelerated rate. So you will get some benefit from that. The class that I intend on doing, inshallah, I won't be teaching Arabic. I went to and got someone who has far more experience than I do as far as teaching, and that is my father. So this is some good news for those who missed Brother Khalifa's classes. You have an opportunity to get back into some of his classes now. And he's going to take those from beginners. So I will teach how to read, and then he's going to pick up on the Arabic language. And there won't be a problem as far as levels. Why? Because as far as him and I, what we're teaching, it doesn't matter where you are. If you can or cannot read, if you cannot read fluently and fluidly, to me, you're still a beginner. And until you can, you're a beginner. So now once you go into the Arabic aspect with him, you're learning how to properly use a dictionary, something that most people did not learn how to do. You're learning how to properly identify patterns. Now, for those who may have some background, maybe a little bit easier, it doesn't mean it won't be a challenge for them. Those who don't know, they get a chance to learn in the best way possible. So it's an advantage to both. So, inshallah, that won't be a problem. But even if you did not take classes with us, you took classes somewhere else, don't be discouraged by that. That's actually even better for you. Okay? My father, he had his own set curriculum. It's a group of books. I made my own curriculum myself for teaching Arabic, for reading Arabic. That's a whole different curriculum that I came up with. It's going through Arabic, Tajweed, and a few other aspects of dictation and writing for beginners. So once students learn that part, that's when they're now qualified to start learning Quran, fiqh, and Arabic. Yes, bro.
What answer did your father give you when you asked him that question?
He did not. No, I don't have any internet on my phone, so I'm waiting to get a chance to connect to some internet. I'm gonna give him a call. I'm like, all right, you see my question? But I will let you know, inshallah. Yes, sir. Correct. This is a scholar who began to lay out the foundations of the science of Tajweed. Allah says in the Quran, وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا, and recite the Quran with tartil. From that, we understand from this ayah, Allah is commanding us to recite the Quran in its best shape or form. Okay? So that means that the Quran, it deserves that. If we're not doing tartil, we're disobeying what Allah commanded us to do. Therefore, we're in a state of sin. The Shaykh, what he said was, مَنْ لَمْ يُجَوِّدِ الْقُرْآنَ آثِمٌ لِأَنَّهُ بِهِ إِلَهُ أَنزَلَ. So whoever does not recite the Quran with Tajweed, they're in a state of sin, meaning if they are not learning. So if they're comfortable with reciting the Quran like that they're in a state of sin. Meaning that if they're comfortable reciting the Quran like that, they are in a state of sin. So sometimes people take classes and they don't fully learn how to recite the Quran. It's still choppy. There's still mistakes. Becoming complacent with that is a sin. You get what I'm trying to say? You get a reward, and those who struggle get too. So the committing the sin is not on the past. Up until that point, I had believed that I was reciting it to the best of what I could do. I didn't know up until that point. From that point moving forward, okay, again, committing a sin if you are complacent, meaning you are satisfied with being wrong. So you know you're doing it wrong, yet you insist on doing it wrong anyway. That's what that means. So you're not trying to correct the wrong. But as long as if you're doing the best of what you can do, and there's better, it's upon you to strive to get to where it's better. If you're doing the best of what you can, that's one thing. But to know that there's better and to be comfortable with doing what's worse, that's where the state of sin is. Does that clarify? Okay.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
استقيم واستووا تواصوا واعتدلوا. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. يسألك الناس عن الساعة قل إنما علمها عند الله وما يدريك لعل الساعة تكون قريبا إن الله لعن الكافرين وأعد لهم سعيرا خالدين فيها أبدا لا يجدون وليا ولا نصيرا يوم تقلب وجوههم في النار يقولون يا ليتنا أطعنا الله وأطعنا الرسولا وقالوا ربنا إنا أطعنا سادتنا وكبراءنا فأضلونا السبيلا ربنا آتهم ضعفين من العذاب والعنهم لعنا كبيرا يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تكونوا كالذين آذوا موسى فبرأه الله مما قالوا وكان عند الله وجيها. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تكونوا كالذين آذوا موسى فبرأه الله مما قالوا وكان عند الله وجيها. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا. ليعذب الله المنافقين والمنافقات والمشركين والمشركات ويتوب الله على المؤمنين والمؤمنات وكان الله غفورا رحيما. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Oh, no. He has to make a plane flight later on tonight, but he's willing to stay a few more minutes now to wrap up if there's any more questions on this talk and on this lecture. So we'll take a few minutes. If you have any further questions regarding his course, because he's going to give some information regarding the course he's going to take. He's offering online, and we encourage everybody to try to take advantage of it. Seeking this knowledge is very important for us, alhamdulillah, in this community. Alhamdulillah, Allah has allowed us to reach some goals economically with respect to a fundraiser and the projects we have for development in this community. But we want to make sure that we all learn this deen correctly, practice it correctly. Alhamdulillah, we have Sheikh Abdul Aziz, others in the community who's giving up knowledge. We have a class on Friday nights for Quran recitation. Sheikh gives a class on Saturday, Tafsir. And hopefully, Brother Amir, with the classes he's going to offer online, we really don't have any excuse about getting this knowledge. We got to buckle down, got to learn, got to put in the time. Allah has blessed us tremendously. But our goal is the akhir. We want to get there. We want to seek knowledge so we can get there and get Allah's blessing. So we're going to continue. Any more questions of the Sheikh? Before we close out. Anybody got any questions from the lecture? Any more questions?
If no further questions, so we'll close out then, inshallah. May Allah bless all of you for coming out, inshallah. And may Allah allow you to acquire and sustain the Islamic knowledge, as it is one of the best assets to acquire. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our families and to bless us with the best in this life and the next. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put barakah in our lives, put barakah around us and around everything that we do. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to preserve our community and to preserve Islam and to use us for His sake and for His cause for Islam. And we ask Allah is pleased with us in the end, because that is one of the most important things that matter. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.